Part 1. For 300 years, no ship had entered or left the Sol system. The Galactic Concord had made sure of that. From their Grand Council chamber on Viridia Prime, they watched the blue-green world through silent drones and long-range sensors. They called it a quarantine zone, level 9, the highest possible. Not because of disease, but because of what lived there. Humans. The Concord had many rules, but one stood above all: never interfere with a species that might threaten galactic peace. And humans, according to old reports, were dangerous. They fought each other constantly. They built weapons that could crack continents. They reached for the stars before they had even learned to share their own world. When early Concord scouts tried to make contact centuries ago, they vanished. Later, wreckage was found. Melted hulls, strange radiation burns, and data logs filled with screams. After that, the decision was made. Seal them in. Watch. Wait. Forget. But on a calm rotation near the edge of the Orion Arm, something changed. A sensor alarm chimed softly in the monitoring wing of Viridia Prime. At first, the duty officer, a slender Mirelli named Kale, thought it was a glitch. Space debris maybe, or a comet shedding ice. But the signal grew stronger, steadier. It wasn't tumbling. It was flying. Kyle tapped his console, eyes narrowing. The object was moving at 0.3 light speed, decelerating smoothly. No exhaust plume, no ion trail, just silent, controlled motion. And it was coming from the Forbidden Zone. Alert Council Sector Gamma, Kale said, voice tight. We have a breach. Within minutes, the Grand Chamber filled with delegates. Tall armored Vorthons stood stiffly near the back. The insect-like Zin hummed in clusters, their antennae twitching. The Qatari, graceful and silver-skinned, floated just above their seats. All eyes turned to the central holo display where a sleek vessel, black as void, shaped like a blade, hovered at the edge of the quarantine boundary. It sent a message. Not a distress call, not a threat, just 5 words repeated in clean, translated Concord Standard. We're ready to talk. The chamber fell silent. Even the air recyclers seemed to pause. Counselor Lyra Vex of the Qatari Collective rose slowly, her robe shimmering. Identify the vessel, she ordered. A junior analyst stammered. It calls itself the Odyssey. Registry unknown, but it's broadcasting human origin codes. A murmur rippled through the room. Some delegates backed away. Others leaned forward, eyes wide with fear or fascination. The Vorthon commander, General Torvak, slammed a clawed fist on his console. They must be destroyed now, before they spread. No, said Lyra, her voice calm but firm. We observe, we assess. That is the Concord way. She ordered a diplomatic escort 3 cruiser-class ships to intercept the Odyssey and bring it to Viridia Prime under full containment protocols. No weapons fire, no boarding. Just watch and wait. Inside the human ship, 4 people stood on the bridge watching the alien vessels approach on their screens. Captain Daniel Brooks leaned against the command console, arms crossed. He was tall, with short brown hair and tired eyes that had seen too many starless nights. Beside him, Engineer Maya Ruiz tapped her fingers nervously on a panel. Her dark hair was tied back and grease smudged her cheek. You think they'll shoot? She asked. Not if they want answers, Daniel said. Behind them, Owen Carter adjusted his earpiece. He was thin, with messy blonde hair and a habit of chewing his lip when nervous. As the team's xenolinguist, he'd spent years studying fragmented Concord transmissions, piecing together grammar and tone. Their language has over 200 dialects, he muttered. Hope I got the polite one right. Lena Foster, the biologist, stood by the viewport, arms wrapped around herself. She was quiet, observant, always watching. They're scared of us, she said softly. You can see it in how they move. Like we're ghosts, Daniel nodded. We've been ghosts for 300 years. Time to say hello. The Odyssey powered down its main drive and allowed the Concord ships to lock tractor beams onto its hull. Gently, they pulled it toward Viridia Prime, a massive ring-shaped station orbiting a gas giant, glowing with soft blue lights and bustling with alien life. As they docked, armored guards in silver armor surrounded the airlock. Hiss, click. The door opened. Daniel stepped out first, hands visible, palms open. Maya followed, then Owen, then Lena. They wore simple gray uniforms with no insignia, no flags, no ranks, just people. A Qatari official floated forward, her face unreadable. State your purpose, she said in perfect English. Daniel met her gaze. We come in peace. We've been waiting a long time to say that. The official blinked slowly. Humans were deemed unstable, violent, unfit for contact. We were, Daniel admitted. But we changed, we had to. Alone with no one to guide us, we learned to heal our world, not just break it. We built things that last. We stopped fighting long enough to look up and see you watching. A Vorthan guard growled, stepping forward, but Lyra Vex raised a hand. Enough. She studied the humans closely. Why now? Why break silence after 3 centuries? Maya spoke up, voice steady. Because we're not hiding anymore. And because we think you owe us an explanation. Lyra's eyes narrowed. For what? For why you locked us away, Owen said quietly. Not to protect us. Not to protect the galaxy. But to protect yourselves. Silence again. Heavy. Thick. Lyra turned to her aides. Prepare guest quarters. Full surveillance. No contact with outside systems. Then to the humans. You will be heard. But know this, if you lie, if you threaten, if you act as your ancestors did, the quarantine will be reinstated. Permanently. Daniel nodded. Fair enough. As they were led away, Lena glanced back at the docking bay. Through the transparent walls, she saw dozens of alien faces watching. Some curious, some angry, some afraid. She smiled faintly. They had made it out, and the galaxy would never be the same. The guest quarters on Viridia Prime were clean, quiet, and watched. Cameras glowed faintly in the corners. The air smelled sterile, like metal and filtered oxygen. Daniel Brooks sat on the edge of a narrow sleeping platform, staring at the smooth white wall. Maya paced near the door, arms crossed. Owen tapped at a small handheld device the Concorde had allowed them to keep, though it had no signal. Lena stood by the window, looking out at the endless swirl of stars and distant ships. They had been here for 2 days. No one had come to speak with them. No food had been offered, though water flowed from a wall dispenser. They weren't prisoners, the guards had said. Just guests under observation. Then, on the 3rd morning, the door slid open. A Qatari woman entered, taller than Lyra Vex, with silver eyes and a calm face. She introduced herself as Envoy Nessa, and carried a tray with 4 covered bowls. Nutrient paste, she said. Safe for human biology, eat, they did. It tasted bland but filling. Nessa watched them carefully. You speak Concord Standard well, she said to Owen. How? We listened, Owen replied. For decades, your long-range comms drifted into our system. We recorded everything. Studied tone, grammar, context. We knew someone was out there. We just didn't know why you never answered. Nessa nodded slowly. Most species beg for entry. You waited, why? Daniel set his bowl down. Because we didn't want to be a problem. We wanted to be ready. After the wars, after the climate collapse, after we nearly wiped ourselves out. We rebuilt. Not just cities, minds. We taught our children that strength isn't in weapons, it's in patience. In listening, Maya added. We also built defenses. Just in case, not to attack. To survive, Nessa's eyes flickered. Your ship has no visible weapons. It doesn't need them, Lena said softly. Our hull absorbs energy, redirects it. We learn from solar flares, cosmic rays, even old nuclear fallout. Our materials adapt. Nessa was silent for a long moment. Then she said, The council will see you today. Full session. Speak truth. One lie, and you will be sent back. They were led through wide, curving halls lit by soft blue strips. Aliens of all kinds moved past, some on legs, some on wheels, some floating. Many stared. A few hissed. But no one attacked. The grand chamber was larger than before, filled with even more delegates. At the center, a circular platform rose from the floor. The humans stood on it alone under bright light. Lyra Vex spoke first. You claim humanity has changed. Prove it. Daniel stepped forward. We stopped using fossil fuels 200 years ago. We healed our oceans. We brought back extinct animals using old DNA. We share power, food, and knowledge across all nations. No more borders. No more armies. Just one world, Owen added. We also mastered neural links, not to control minds, but to share memories. To understand each other better. A child in Tokyo can feel what it's like to walk on Mars because someone recorded it and shared it freely. Maya held up her wrist. A thin band glowed faintly. This powers my suit, my tools, even my thoughts. It runs on clean fusion, small enough to fit in your palm. We've had it for 50 years. We never used it to build bombs. Only to build homes, Lena spoke last. We studied you too. Not just your language. Your biology. Your history. We know the Zin rebuild their hives after every storm. We know the Morelli sing to their young in frequencies we can't hear. We know the Vorthans value honor above life. We didn't just listen to survive. We listened to respect. A murmur spread through the chamber. Some delegates looked impressed. Others suspicious. General Torvak stood. Words are easy. Show us your ship. Let our scientists inspect it. Daniel exchanged glances with his crew. Only if our engineer is present? And no one touches the core. The council agreed. Later in a sealed hangar, Concord scientists swarmed the Odyssey. They scanned its hull, tested its airlock, even tried to interface with its systems. Nothing worked without human biometrics. Maya stood nearby, arms folded, answering questions with short, clear replies. One Morelli scientist, her skin shimmering with curiosity, asked, "How do you withstand deep space radiation?" "Our scans show your cells regenerate faster than any known species." Lena stepped in. "We don't block radiation, we use it. Our DNA has repair triggers activated by cosmic rays. It's why we age slower in space. Earth's magnetic field used to protect us, but when we left orbit, we evolved. Not by choice, by need." The scientist blinked her large black eyes. "You evolved in 300 years?" "Not all of us," Lena said. "Just those who went to space. Natural selection, fast-forwarded." Back in the chamber, the mood had shifted. The Zin elder, clicking softly, said, "They are not what the archives described. They are thoughtful." But Torvak wasn't convinced. Thoughtful or not, their past is blood. Their potential is unknown. They should remain contained. Lyra raised a hand. The Concord was built on truth, not fear. If their claims are real, they deserve a place among us. Then Owen did something unexpected. He pulled a small crystal from his pocket, a data shard. "We brought proof," he said. 3 centuries of human history. Every war, every mistake, every triumph, all recorded, uncensored. You can watch it all. See how we fell, and how we rose." He handed it to Lyra. She accepted it slowly, as if holding something fragile. That night, in their quarters, the humans sat in silence. The lights dimmed automatically. Outside, a fleet of merchant ships drifted past like glowing fish. "You think they'll believe us?" Maya asked. "They don't have to believe us," Daniel said. "They just have to see us." Lena looked at her hands. "I keep thinking, what if they're right? What if we're still dangerous? Not with weapons, but with ideas, with hope. Maybe that's scarier." Owen smiled faintly. "Hope broke their rules. That's why they locked us away, because we never stopped trying." The next morning, a message came. The council would deliberate for 3 days. Until then, the humans could walk the public decks, under escort, but free to observe. They saw markets where light was traded as currency, schools where young aliens solved math with dance, gardens floating in zero-gravity domes filled with plants from 100 worlds. A small Qatari child ran up to Daniel, holding a glowing flower. "For you," she said in broken standard. He knelt. "Thank you," she tilted her head. "Are you really human?" "Yes. Do you eat stars?" He laughed softly. "No, we just sail near them." She grinned and ran off. Maya watched her go. "They've never seen one of us before. Not in person." "No," Daniel said. "Just stories. Monsters in the dark." "But we're not monsters," Lena said. "No," Owen agreed. "We're just people who finally made it out of the dark." And for the first time since they left Earth, they felt something they hadn't expected. Not fear. Not pride, but belonging. Even if the council said no. They had already done the impossible. They had been seen. The 3rd day of waiting began with a strange silence. No guards came to the door. No messages arrived. The humans ate their morning paste in quiet, watching the slow drift of ships beyond the window. Something had changed. The air felt heavier, charged like before a storm. Then, just after mid-cycle, Envoy Nessa returned, but she wasn't alone. 2 Morelli diplomats floated behind her, their faces unreadable, their robes dark blue instead of the usual silver. They didn't speak as they led the humans through a different corridor, narrower and dimmer, ending at a sealed chamber deep in Viridia Prime's lower levels. Inside, the walls were lined with old data panels, some flickering with static. A single hollow projector sat in the center, casting a weak light. Nessa turned to them. "What you are about to see was never meant for outside eyes. It was buried, deleted, but fragments remained. She activated the projector. Grainy footage filled the room, a human city burning, skies choked with smoke. But the attackers weren't human. Sleek insect-like ships hovered above, firing beams that turned buildings to glass. Then came ground troops, tall armored figures with clawed hands dragging people into cages. Not killing them. Collecting them, Lena gasped. That's Chicago. Or what's left of it, Owen's voice shook. Those aren't Vorthons. Their armor has Qatari markings. But modified, Nessa nodded. This happened 298 years ago. A conquered Black Ops unit, calling themselves the Harvest Wing, entered Sol system under false flags. They believed human DNA held adaptive traits worth extracting. They took thousands. Men, women, children, for study, for breeding, for weaponization. Daniel's fist clenched. And the quarantine? Was their cover, Nessa said. After humans fought back using crude but effective gravity pulses and biodisruptors, the Harvest Wing was destroyed. But the conquered couldn't admit its own crime. So they declared Earth a biohazard zone, locked it away, rewrote history. Maya stared at the screen where a young girl in a torn dress screamed as she was dragged into a ship. They made us the monsters, so no one would ask who the real monsters were. The Myrelli diplomats finally spoke. One named Sila said, "We found this data in a dead archive, buried under false coordinates. We believe the same group still exists." Quietly, in the shadows, Owen's mind raced. That's why our ship was scanned so hard. They weren't just checking for weapons. They were looking for genetic markers. To see if we're pure, or if their experiments left traces. Lena's eyes widened. My regeneration ability. My cells healing faster in space. What if that's not natural? What if it's from something they did long ago? Silence fell. Daniel turned to Nessa. Why tell us this now? Because you asked the right question, she said. You didn't beg for entry. You asked why you were kept out. And truth has a way of rising even after centuries. That afternoon, the humans were summoned back to the Grand Chamber, but this time, the mood was tense. Whispers filled the air. Delegates avoided eye contact. General Torvak stood rigid, his claws tapping against his armor. Lyra Vex called the session to order. Captain Brooks, you have requested to speak again. State your purpose. Daniel stepped onto the platform. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't point fingers. He simply said, you didn't quarantine us to protect the galaxy. You quarantined us to hide your shame. A ripple of shock moved through the chamber. Torvak snarled. Lies, human propaganda. No, Daniel said. Truth, we've seen the records. The Harvest Wing, the abductions, the cover-up. You punished us for defending our home, while your own broke every law you claimed to uphold. He turned to the full assembly. Ask yourselves, why were humans labeled violent? Because we fought back, or because you needed a story to justify stealing our people? Owen stepped forward. We've analyzed conquered biotech patents from the last 200 years. Several contain human-derived gene sequences, especially in adaptive immune systems and neural resilience. Someone never stopped using us. They just stopped calling it theft. Lena added, if you truly believed we were dangerous, you'd have destroyed us. But you didn't, you watched. You waited. Because you still wanted what we are, the chamber erupted. Sin delegates clicked in outrage. Myrelli sang low notes of grief. Even some Vorthons looked uneasy. Lyra raised her hands for silence. These are grave claims. Do you have proof? Owen held up the crystal shard. Everything is in here, including logs from the Harvest Wing's own ships, coordinates, names, orders signed by a Concord security director who vanished after the mission failed. Sila of the Myrelli spoke from the floor. We have verified partial data. It matches hidden financial trails. Funding was rerouted through dummy colonies for decades. Torvak slammed his fist down. This is a human trick. They seek to divide us. Then let the records speak, Daniel said calmly. Open the archives. Audit the labs. If we're wrong, send us back. But if we're right, then the real threat isn't humanity. It's the lie you've lived with for 300 years. Lyra looked at the council. A vote must be held. Not on human status, but on whether to investigate these claims. Torvak stood. I moved to reject all evidence as fabricated, and to reseal the Sol quarantine immediately. A Qatari elder rose. I moved to authorize a full inquiry. Truth must not be buried twice. The debate raged for hours. Outside the chamber, rumors spread like fire. In the corridors, humans were no longer just curiosities, they were symbols. Some saw them as victims, others as clever invaders sowing chaos. Back in their quarters that night, the humans sat in exhausted silence. "They're scared," Maya said. "Not of us, of what we represent." "Accountability," Lena whispered. Owen rubbed his eyes. "If they open those files, it won't just be about us. It'll shake the whole Concord." Daniel looked out the window at the spinning stars. "Good, maybe it's time something shook." Then a soft chime. The door opened. A young Zin messenger stood there holding a small data chip. "For you," it clicked in rough standard. "From the Myrelli, they say." "It's more." Owen took it, plugged it into his device, new files loaded. Lab schematics, genetic maps, and one name repeated over and over. Project Pandora Strain. Maya read over his shoulder. "They're still doing it. Breeding hybrids, soldiers with human reflexes, but no free will." Lena's hands trembled. "That's why they're so afraid of us. Not because we're wild, but because we're free." Daniel stood. "Then we don't just speak for Earth anymore. We speak for everyone they stole from." And in that moment, the mission changed. It wasn't about joining the galaxy, it was about healing it. Tension hung over Viridia Prime like a storm cloud. The Council's vote had ended in deadlock, no decision, only delay. But in the silence that followed, things began to break. First, a supply depot near the outer rim exploded. No warning, no survivors. Then 3 navigation beacons near the old Sol quarantine line went dark. Their signals didn't fade, they were erased as if cut by a blade. The official reports called them accidents. But Owen knew better. He'd been quietly sharing data with Scylla of the Myrelli, using hidden channels in the ship's backup comms. The patterns matched. Too clean, too precise. "They're trying to scare us," Maya said, pacing their quarters. "Or frame us." Lena shook her head. "Worse, they're testing how far they can push before the Council acts." Daniel stood by the window watching a Concord patrol ship drift past. "They don't want war. They want chaos. If humans look like the cause, the vote flips. Quarantine stays. Truth stays buried." That night, Scylla visited again, this time through a service tunnel cloaked in thermal dampening fabric. She handed Owen a small drive. "We found it," she whispered. "A black site lab, hidden inside a dead comet near the Vorthan border. They call it Nest 7, Owen plugged it in. Blueprints unfolded on his screen. Chambers filled with tanks, each holding humanoid figures with pale skin and blank eyes. Genetic tags labeled them Pandora strain, batch 14 Naru. Human DNA spliced with Vorthan strength, Qatari reflexes, Zin hive mind links, soldiers without souls. Maya's breath caught. "They're not just copying us. They're building an army that obeys without question. And if those accidents keep happening," Lena said, "they'll blame the Odyssey. Say we brought violence with us." Daniel turned. "We need proof. Real proof. Not just files, live evidence." Scylla hesitated. "Getting to Nest 7 is suicide. Vorthan patrols guard it. And if you're caught..." "We won't be caught," Daniel said. "We'll go in quiet. Just like we left Earth." The plan formed fast. The Odyssey still had its stealth coating. Nanofibers that bent light and masked heat. Maya could reroute power to silent mode. Owen would hack the lab's internal network using old human protocols the Concord never knew existed. Lena would collect tissue samples to confirm the genetic theft. They left at shift change when Viridia Prime's traffic was heaviest. The Odyssey slipped from its dock like a shadow, vanishing into the swarm of cargo haulers and courier drones. No alarm sounded. No ships gave chase. 3 days later, they reached the comet. It looked dead, gray, pitted, spinning slowly in the void. But scans showed heat deep inside. And energy pulses. Owen guided them through a narrow fissure into a hidden bay. No guards, no cameras. Just silence. Inside, the air was cold and smelled of antiseptic. Rows of tanks glowed faintly, filled with fluid and floating figures. Some looked human. Others had scales or extra joints or eyes that opened and stared blankly at nothing. Lena moved quickly, taking samples with a handheld extractor. "Their brains are suppressed," she whispered. No pain, no fear. Just waiting for orders. Maya tapped into a wall terminal. "I'm in. Security logs, mission reports, here it is. Orders signed by a Vorthan commander. Same one who pushed for our recontainment." Owen downloaded everything. We've got names, dates, funding trails, even voice logs of them discussing harvesting fresh Earth stock if the quarantine ever lifted. Then, alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Doors slammed shut. They knew we'd come, Daniel said. Footsteps echoed down the hall, heavy, armored. Vorthan enforcers. Back to the ship, Maya ordered. They ran. Lena dropped a smoke pellet, a human trick from old Earth wars. The corridor filled with thick gray fog. Gunfire erupted wild and blind. At the bay, the Odyssey's ramp was already down. Owen hit the launch sequence. Engines hummed to life. Just as they lifted off, a blast hit the hull. Not enough to stop them, but enough to leave a scar. Back in open space, they transmitted everything. Not to the council, to every public channel they could find. Newsnets, student forums, merchant guilds, even pirate bands. The truth spread like wildfire. Within hours, protests erupted across neutral systems. Myrelli singers broadcast grief songs about stolen lives. Sin hives shut down trade with Vorthan sectors. Qatari youth posted human poetry on public walls. On Viridia Prime, the council reconvened in emergency session. This time, Torvak didn't speak first. A young Morelli delegate stood holding a data slate. We have seen the truth. Our silence made us guilty. We demand justice, a Zin elder clicked. The Pandora strain must be freed, studied, healed. Even some Vorthans looked ashamed. Lyra Vex turned to Daniel, who stood once more on the central platform. This time not as a guest, but as a witness, Captain Brooks, she said. You could have run. You could have fought. But you chose truth, Daniel nodded. Because hiding never saved anyone, not us. Not them, she turned to the assembly. The evidence is clear. A faction within this Concord broke our oldest law. Do not steal what cannot be given. They will be held accountable. The labs will be shut down, the subjects protected. Then she looked at Daniel again. And humanity will not be forgotten again. But as the humans returned to their quarters that night, Owen stared at his screen. One message blinked in the corner. Encrypted, untraceable, it read, "They know you're here. Watch your backs." Daniel saw it too. He didn't flinch. Let them watch, he thought. We're not hiding anymore. The tribunal began at dawn cycle, though Viridia Prime had no sun. The chamber glowed with soft white light as if the station itself held its breath. Delegates filled every seat. Even the back rows, usually empty, were packed. News drones hovered near the ceiling, silent and still. Everyone knew this was more than a hearing. It was a turning point. Daniel Brooks walked in first, followed by Maya, Owen, and Lena. They wore the same gray uniforms, now slightly worn, but clean. No chains, no guards. Just 4 humans walking into the heart of the galaxy they had been denied for 300 years. Lyra Vex stood at the center. Her voice when she spoke was calm but firm. The evidence has been reviewed, verified, cross-checked by neutral parties. The actions of the so-called Harvest Wing and its successors violated every principle of the Galactic Concord. Those responsible will face judgment. Their labs will be dismantled. The subjects of Project Pandora Strain will be given care, not cages. She paused. And humanity will no longer be a secret. A murmur rose, not of protest, but of relief. Even General Torvak sat in silence, his claws folded, his eyes downcast. Lyra turned to Daniel. You came not to conquer. Not to demand, but to ask why you were shut out. And in doing so, you gave us back our honor. Daniel nodded. We didn't want special treatment, just a chance to stand among you as equals. You have earned that chance, Lyra said. Effective immediately, the Sol system quarantine is dissolved. Earth is granted provisional membership in the Galactic Concord. Full rights will follow after cultural and scientific exchange protocols are established. Maya let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Owen smiled faintly. Lena wiped a tear from her eye. After the session, the humans were led not to their old quarters, but to a new suite. Larger, brighter, with a real window showing the full curve of Viridia Prime against the stars. A small delegation waited. Scylla the Morelli, 2 young Zin scholars, and even a Qatari child, the same one who had given Daniel the glowing flower. She held out another. For your home, she said. Daniel took it gently. Thank you. Later, as they prepared the Odyssey for departure, Concord engineers helped install new comms arrays and navigation beacons. Gifts, not conditions. Maya worked side by side with a Vorthan technician who barely spoke. but nodded in respect when she fixed a power coupling with a twist of her wrist. Owen uploaded the final logs. Every file, every truth now part of the public Concord archive. No more secrets. Lena stood on the observation deck one last time, watching alien children play in a floating garden. A Myrelli girl waved at her. Lena waved back. On the bridge, Daniel checked the course. Earth, home, but not the same home they'd left. Now, it would have visitors, teachers, students, friends. As the Odyssey undocked, a fleet formed around it, not to guard, but to escort. Ships from the Myrelli, the Zin, the Qatari, even a single Vorthon cruiser flying a peace banner. They would travel with the humans partway, a sign to all who watched. This species is no longer alone. Back on Viridia Prime, in a quiet corner of the Grand Chamber, a young Qatari student asked her teacher, "Are humans really as dangerous as the old stories say?" The teacher looked out at the departing ships, then smiled. "No, they're worse. They make you question everything you thought you knew. And that," she added silently, "is how change begins." The Odyssey jumped to light speed, leaving a trail of calm behind it. Inside, the crew sat in comfortable silence. No alarms, no fear. Just the hum of the engines and the soft glow of star maps. Maya broke the quiet. "Do you think they'll come to Earth?" "Some will," Daniel said. "To learn, to trade, maybe even to heal." Owen tapped his console. "We'll need translators, schools, maybe a galactic park in the Himalayas." Lena laughed softly. "And someone to explain why we cry at sunsets." They all smiled. For so long, humans had been defined by their past, by war, by loss, by survival. But now they would be known for something else, for patience, for truth, for showing up, not with weapons, but with open hands. As Earth's blue glow appeared on the view screen, Daniel felt something he hadn't in years: peace. They had gone into the dark not to escape, but to return with light, and the galaxy at last was ready to see it.